Yep. And we are live. Welcome to the Dr. Dare Show, live on Facebook and YouTube. It's Friday. We made it, right? We made it
Yes,
to
we made it.
Friday. Yes. So when you come in, click share, like the video, and check in and let us know how you are doing and how your week has been. I have with me the lovely Erica Bennett, the
How are you?
author of A Jealous Person Will Kill You Literally. Um, yeah, so you
Hello.
hello.
Hi.
And so we have one person on. When you come in, click share and say hello. Hey Michelle, you made it home, huh? Can you see the comments, Erica? Do you see the
I
comments
can.
there?
I can see them
Okay,
right.
good.
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. So yeah, this has been a long week for me. It's always like that. Like when you come back from a vacation, it feels like that week just drags on.
Right.
But we made it. How was your week, Erica?
It was pretty good. It went by really fast, but it was pretty good.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Seems like I
Mine
always have a
didn't.
lot going on, a lot of things to do, but it was pretty
Hmm.
good. Pretty good week.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Hey y'all, when you come in, say hello. Hey Keith. Keith saved us the other day, Erica, when we were yesterday when we were trying to get connected. I didn't
Oh,
realize I didn't realize I
thank
had
you,
the
Keith.
mute right. I had the mute button on and I kept saying you can't hear me and that's why cuz the mute
Okay.
button was down.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Hey Karen, how are you? Hey Angela, I hope you feel better with that booster. We missed you in class
Yeah.
tonight.
Oh,
Yeah. So as y'all come on, say hello to Erica. She's our guest tonight. She is the author
hello.
of A Jealous Person Will Kill You Literally. Um, hey, my sister's on, Donetta. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And y'all will get to meet Erica soon. But just tell us how your day is and well, your evening is day for Erica or evening for Erica too.
Oh, me? It's my turn.
Oh no 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 no. I'm waiting for them to chat. But you can say whatever you want, Erica. It's your
Oh, okay.
space too. They're
Hello,
saying hello.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Hello. It's going so fast. Hi, Key. And somebody else said hello. Let's see.
Delisha. Delisha
Delisha.
said, mm-hmm.
Yes. Hi, Delisha.
Yep, it's your show tonight, Erica.
And
Angela.
Donetta. Hi.
Uh-huh.
And Angela. And Karen.
Yes.
Hello.
How's y'all week been? Y'all check in and let me know how you've been feeling. Was it a stressful week, a hard week, a easy week? Is it cold? How are you handling the COVID stuff going on? It seems like numbers are going up, but it seems like the symptoms are kind of mild.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we will start at 8:40, giving people a chance to come in. I know people are just getting off of work. Hey, Tanisha, what's going on? I call Tanisha Janet
Oh, hi,
Jackson because
Tanisha.
she likes Janet Jackson, so that's her
Oh,
name.
yeah. I do too.
Keith Keith said I paid bills and now I'm broke.
Well, at least the bills are paid.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Hey, Michelle.
And I'm glad y'all joined tonight. Y'all get to hear the fantastic Erica tell her story about jealousy. We've all experienced jealousy at one point or another, but as me and her were speaking earlier, hers is an
Yes.
extreme case. And so I felt like her story is very needed. People need to hear it. And yeah, Tanisha, Keith said, but sad, but not sad. Yeah, because you paid all your bills, Keith. Okay, we got like 5 minutes. So, yes. Don't forget to like and share this video so that people can um, learn, replay it later. I'm gonna pin Erica's book on the screen. You should see it below there. If you want to purchase it, I purchased mine. It's on its way. But I advise you, once you hear her story, I'm sure you're going to want to read it. Um, and the link will be everywhere. I'll post it after the show is over tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's see what they're saying out there. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Kelly, I think I passed you on the freeway today when I was going to Atlantic Station to teach Zumba today. Are y'all good out there? Yeah. Hello, hello. Okay, so we know tonight, for those who are just joining, welcome to the Dr. Dare Show live on YouTube and Facebook. We have author Erica Bennett, the author of A Jealous Person Will Kill You Literally. We will be talking about the word jealousy, and we will learn more about that through her story. We're doing good, Kelly. How are you? And so it's an important story to be shared. We've all, like I said earlier, we've all been through jealousy. So um, happy New Year, Karen. Happy New Year, everyone. Actually,
Happy New Year.
this is the first Dr. Dare show of the year because I we've been on hiatus for 2 weeks. Yeah. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Hello.
Yes. Thank y'all for being friendly too. I knew y'all would be, so I'm
I appreciate that. Thank you.
they're a good group. We have fun. We have good discussions and
Awesome.
yeah. So Erica's going to be telling her story. You can ask questions. I'll try to read them on here if she's talking. If she sees them, she can address them when she wants. But yeah, so we can get started. We're close to our time. So again, like I said, this is Erica Bennett. She is in LA, right? Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
Yes.
Yes, she used to live here in Atlanta. She wrote "A Jealous Person Will Kill You," literally. And where did you get that title again from, Erica? Your mom, right?
When I was growing up, my mom would always say to me and my sister that a jealous person will kill you. And I remember, being a little girl, I would say, Mom, what does that mean? Like, you mean like kill you? And my mom was like, Yes, when you get older, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. And she would always tell us that. And it was so funny because when I finished writing my book, my mom said, Well, what's the title of your book? And I said, Mom, remember what you used to tell us when we were growing up? My mom said, Yes, I used to tell you guys a jealous person will kill you. I said, Yes, that's the title of the book. A jealous person will kill you literally. And she just
Wow,
laughed. Her and my dad laughed. She was like, But, now that you're older, I'm sure you understand a lot
you
more
understand,
what I
right?
was saying. And now I
And that's
do.
good. That's a great topic and title, because that is a common thing. I think I've done some 5 ways to identify a jealous person, things like that. But again, like yours is um, extreme. And so we're getting ready to learn all about it. So I'm going to release you to start telling your story. Keith says, "Where are the refreshments?" Keith, if you get up right and you go to your refrigerator, I think they're in there. He's so funny. All right, so Erica, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. And is there anything that you wanted to tell them about yourself before you get started? Um,
Well, I lived in Atlanta, for about 19 and a half years. So I'm very familiar with Atlanta. I went to college in Atlanta, HBCU. I
mhm.
graduated from Morris Brown and Clark, Atlanta. And I moved back to California in 2012. life happens, and going through a divorce and having a son, I wanted to be back, around my family, my parents and all
Mhm.
my sisters and my brother. Everybody is here, either in Southern California or Northern California. But Georgia is still like my home too. So I have two homes:
Okay.
California, which is where I grew up and I was born and raised, and Georgia
Mhm.
is my other home. I still have a lot of friends from college that live in Atlanta. So, yeah,
Okay.
we're all just like a family. That's sort of like how HBCUs are. You remain
Mhm.
family for like forever. So some of them still even come here. They come here. They brought the HBCU to LA actually.
Really?
Yes, one of the ladies that graduated from Morris Brown, she started at LA chapter, and so every year here in LA, we have like all the HBCUs get together. We have like
Mhm.
a party, we have a picnic, and it's just like really, really fun. All the HBCUs are there, not just Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, and Clark, but
Just
it's
all of them.
all of them. We all come together and we have like activities and stuff set up. So it's just really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so we're at our 8:40 mark, and so you can start telling us your story from the start. Give us like that timeline of how everything progressed, like we talked about yesterday, kind of.
Okay. Did you want me to start at the part of writing my book, how it got started?
Okay, it's up
Okay.
to you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk to everyone about, how I got started. I do remember being in undergraduate school and I was working at the bank. And I don't know if everybody remembers the bank Wachovia, but I was working at
Oh
Wachovia
yeah.
in
Mhm.
in Atlanta. I was actually at the Buckhead branch. And it was a guy that came in. I had not been familiar with him, but he was a customer and he came in, and I was a teller. And so after I, cashed his check, he goes, when you write that book, I'm going to be the first to purchase it. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what book? I don't plan on writing the book. Like, I don't even know what he's talking about. I never, said I was going to write a book. And I thought, I'm not writing any books. I'm trying to get through undergrad right now. But
Mhm.
yeah, I thought about that. And I just kind of brushed it to the side. And then, you know, my life in Georgia, I start the book off from when I moved to Georgia from California. And then I was staying with my play cousin. I call her my play cousin because she dated one of my cousins when I was about 4 years old. And they
Mhm.
dated until I was about 16. And
Mhm.
so I consider her like family. So I call her a play cousin, but she's not. But initially, I was supposed to go to Atlanta and stay on campus. And, things happened. I ended up having to stay with her for a year until I got my own place. So I actually start my book where I'm moving to Georgia from California and
Mhm.
how that is. But I'm also going to take you back to when I moved back to California from Georgia. I went to church, our family church,
Mhm.
and me and my son went to church with my dad. And it was a lady pastor at the church who she worked under my cousin, who was the head pastor. And she said, I really need to talk to you after church. And I was
Mhm.
thinking, I don't know what's that all about. But, after church, she took me to the side and she said, God told me to tell you to write that book. And I'm thinking, here we go again about writing this book. But at this time, I had I had a whole lot of things that had happened in my life, transpired in my life, by
Mhm.
that time. And so, and she also said, God also said, don't worry about how long the book is supposed to be or what you should talk about. God said to just write it. And I was thinking, okay, well, this must be like my cue to go ahead and write this book.
Mhm.
But I still didn't write the book. I would always put other things ahead of writing my book. When I got a job here in California, once I came back, I did get a job as a dean. And so my excuses were, oh, well, I can't write the book because I'm working with the kids and I have so much going on. And then when I became a school counselor, then I was
Mhm.
like, oh, there's so much going on. And one thing about it, when God is trying to get your attention, every excuse that you use in terms of why you can't do something that
Uh-huh.
he is urging you to do, he will remove those things from your life until you do it. And
Right.
so God removed the school counseling job from my life. And I was at a point of depression. And, it's a backstory with that. My second book, my other book could talk about that part, why I'm not a school counselor. But I thought, okay, God, you're trying to tell me something. You're trying to tell me to write this book. And I remember I had about 40 something pages, almost 50 pages of my book. And I
Mhm.
remember my brother coming over to my house and saying, Erica, how's the book going? And I'm like, oh, well, I have writer's block. And my brother is like, writer's block? He goes, well, he said, well, you need to pray and you need to, talk to God and ask God to help you with that. And that night, I did get on my knees and I prayed and I said, God, just whatever it is that I'm supposed to talk about in my book, can you just let it flow and help me with the writer's block? And I kid you not, it was
Mhm.
that night I typed up, I'd say at least another 50 or more pages, but it just continued to flow from that point. And I
Mhm.
thought, thank you. And then I remember when I got to maybe a page 300 and something, I was watching TV, but I was typing my book and I was thinking to myself, but I didn't speak it out loud. I was
Mhm.
thinking, well, I don't know how to go about finding a publisher. Like I've never, written a book before, so I don't know what the process is. And it was maybe three something, almost 4 o'clock in the morning. And I looked at my television and it said Newman Springs Publishing. And I thought, God, this is another sign. And so you
Mhm.
remove things out of my life that the excuses that I used on why I couldn't write the book. And
Right.
now I'm trying to come up with another excuse because that would have been my other excuse. Well, I can't find
Find
a
a
publisher
publisher.
and I don't know how to go about it once I'm done with the book. And so
Mhm.
long story short, the publisher that I saw on television is the publisher that published my book. I actually called them and they wanted to keep in contact with me in terms of, how far along I am with the book.
Mhm.
And when they did call me, I had told him, I said, I actually finished the book today. He said, oh, wonderful. Send it on over. And he said, we have to have our team of our people to read your book,
Mhm.
and they have to make a decision on whether or not we'll publish your book. And so it was a few days later, I said about 2 or 3 days later, he called me back and he said, guess what? We want to publish your book and we don't want you to change anything, not the title, not anything. And I
Mhm.
thought, this is all God. This is all God. It's meant for me to write this book. It was obviously meant for me to write this book because maybe my story will help someone else in a similar situation. And
Right.
so that's how I wrote my book. Well, got started. And
Mhm.
what I talk about in my book, as I said, I talk about moving from California to Georgia. And that was actually my first time being on an airplane.
Oh,
When
really?
when I was growing up, my dad and my mom, they would take us everywhere, but we always traveled by car. So we drive to Texas from California, we drive to Arkansas. Everything we pretty much we did by car. So
Mhm.
when I went to Georgia, that was like my first time ever being on a plane. And I remember when it took off, I was like this. And I was glad that I was on the red eye flight. But I talk about my experience of when I got to Georgia. I got there about a month before school started because I wanted to
Mhm.
be, more familiar with the campus. So I went to visit the campus and stuff. And something happened with my financial aid. And I ended up, I didn't have enough money to stay on campus. And so my play cousin was like, well, you can just stay here,
Mhm.
for a year until like you get your own place. And there were things that happened even, living with her, like, a lot of uneasy situations, a lot of vindictive things that she did. And I
Mhm.
talk about that in my book. I talk about how she, I didn't have a car and we
Mhm.
were initially living on the bus line. And then she moved off the bus line, which meant that I would have to depend on her to drop me off at the airport because we were in Clayton County. So I'd have to depend on her to do that, drop me off so that I can go to school and then catch the train back to the airport. And then she picked me up from there. But I
Mhm.
really liked the fact that I was on the bus line. But, whenever she would get upset with me about minor things, I mean, it would be, things that really and truly it's not something that someone would be upset about. She would tell
Mhm.
me, well, I can't take you to the train station today, so you're going to have to find your way. And the train station, walking to get there, to get to school by 8 o'clock in the morning for my first class, I'd probably have to start walking to the train station from her apartment. I'd say maybe about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That was a
Mhm.
pretty far walk. And I talk about that. I detailed that in the first part of my book. I talk about one night when she said that she was not going to be able to pick me up from the train station because, at first she would start off, oh, I can't take you. And then it would
Mhm.
be, oh, well, I can't pick you up. And one night I just thought, oh my God, my late class, ended at, I don't know, six something. So it was already dark first semester. And one night I remember walking from the train station trying to walk back to her
Mhm.
apartment. And I remember a taxi cab driver picked me up. And when the taxi cab driver, was going to pick me up, I was really nervous, because I was just thinking, oh my God. And then when he said, well, get in, I'll give you a ride. And, of course, I'm not really that familiar yet with Georgia. And so when he
Mhm.
said, I'll give you a ride, I said, well, I don't have any money like to pay for a taxi cab. And I know taxis are expensive. And so he said, don't worry about it. He said, where you're walking is a very dangerous area. And they
Mhm.
found a lot of girls about your age body in like this little area
Oh
where you're
no.
walking.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, oh my goodness, it was like a field. And I was thinking, oh my goodness. And he told me, he said, you know what? Let me give you my pager number. We didn't have cell phones, we had pagers. He said, let me give
Uh-huh.
you your number. And from now on, whenever you need a ride, either to the train station or from the train station back home, please call me because I don't want you walking. This is so unsafe, you know?
Mhm.
And so that happened. And not just that, it was another guy that I met while living with my cousin. I had got a job now. I got a job at the bank. And so now I had the money that I needed to move out of her
From the
place. It
cousin.
was like a
From the
year later,
cousin.
school was now
Uh-huh.
out, and I got a job at the bank. And I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. And I ended up, my auntie here in California, my mom's sister, she co signed for me to get my own apartment. It was a studio apartment. And I remember I had 2 weeks of training that I had to go through. Since school was now out, I could, when I got the job, it was like bam, bam, bam. It happened at the time that it needed to happen. And they told me, well, you need to be in training for 2 weeks. And after your 2 weeks, then we will place you at the branch that you're going to be at. Well,
Mhm.
now my play cousin says, well, I can't take you to the airport for those 2 weeks. I can't take you. And I thought, okay, well, how am I going to get to training? Because if I don't do the training, they said I can't have the job. And so
Mhm.
she was like, I don't know. I'm going to be carpooling from now on with my friends to work in the morning. And I'm just not going to be able to drop you off in the morning so that you can get to your training. And so I remember asking one of my friends, who had now moved from California back to Georgia because she's originally from Georgia, but we went to high school together in California. So her and her mom and her sister and brother, they were now in Georgia. And I
Mhm.
remember her saying, well, don't worry about it, Erica. I'll just pick you up and take you, so that you can do your training. It's only 2 weeks and we'll just, do what we have to do because I don't want you to miss your training.
Mhm.
She was already working at a bank herself. So she kind of understood, but she had a car. And so
Wow.
I also met another guy in the complex where I was walking home from the
Mhm.
train.
Mhm.
And because my cousin said she couldn't, pick me up. So I was walking home and he stopped and I'm just like, do you live here? And so he was telling me, well, I live here with my sister for now. He said, but, why are you walking? And he said, I'll just take you since we live here. And he showed me where he lived or whatnot. And
Mhm.
so, after a while, we got to talking, and I told him how, my cousin do little funny stuff. My brother calls it being funny style, but she was doing like little funny style stuff.
Uh-huh.
And he told me, he said, you know what, with your training, your friend, it's probably hectic for her to come from Decatur to Clayton County, Riverdale, to come get you and then go take you to the train station or take you to work, and then she go to work. He said, if you need a ride in the morning, it's only going to be 2 weeks. He said, I live here with my sister. I can just pick you up every morning at 6 a.m. and take you to the train station. So it
Wow, that
worked
was
out.
nice.
And I was just
Mhm.
like, that's great. And God works in mysterious ways, because
Mhm.
I remember saying, when I did finally, after I finished my training, now I'm starting my job, I'm getting my pretty big check, and I'm moving into my place. And I said, okay, I need to call them. The guy in the my cousin's apartment complex who was giving me a ride to the train station, as well as the taxi cab driver who would bring me
Uh-huh.
back home and sometime, pick me up. I said, I need to call them and thank them. And I want to do something really nice for them. And I remember when I called, I couldn't get through to the taxi cab driver anymore.
Mhm.
It was like, I couldn't get through to the taxi cab driver. And then I remember when I would go to the airport and I would look for his car, which usually would always be sitting right in the front. I never saw him again. And I thought it was sort of like basically not a working cell phone number.
Oh,
But
wow. That's strange.
that was strange. And then
Yeah.
I remember when I called the guy who lived in my cousin's complex, his sister answered, and she was just like, you know, my brother? She said, oh, because, you know, she said, he doesn't live here anymore. She said, but, he was, I guess, on hiatus. He was a pilot for Delta. He
Oh,
was an
wow.
airline pilot for Delta. And basically, I couldn't get in contact with him anymore. So it was like,
It-
when I didn't need the rides anymore, and I'm trying to get in contact with them to say thank you again and to do something nice for them, I can't get in contact with them. And then I thought, thank you, God. This is obviously you working out,
Yeah.
your miracles. Something is happening,
Mhm.
and I know it's because of you. So now I'm going to fast forward to I'm, in undergrad, I'm living on my own. And it's a lot of things that happened between there. But I will start when I was in college. When I was in college, I remember my last year of college being called into the financial aid office and told by
Mhm.
my financial aid counselor that one of the scholarships that I had, it was I had exhausted money. And she said,
Uh-huh.
you go to a private college. It doesn't take long for certain scholarship money to be depleted. And you're
Trust
either
me,
going
I
to have to
know.
like
Yeah.
find a scholarship to replace it, or you're going to have the money to pay, or else,
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to be in school. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And I remember it's a story that you'll read in the book, but I
Mhm.
do remember asking my friend, one of my really close homeboys at school. I remember asking him and telling him that I was thinking of working at a strip club. And he was just like, working at a strip club. No, you can't do that. You can't work at a
Mhm.
strip club. I said, I need fast money. And because I'm not going to be able to apply for a scholarship and get a scholarship in
That
time to
quick,
finish
right.
out this last, term in
Mhm.
school. And he was
Mhm.
like, yeah, but why do you have to do that? And I remember saying, well, do you know anybody here on campus, or do you know somebody? He said, well, there's a girl in my class that I know works at a club. He said, but you're gonna he said, I don't feel comfortable doing this, because I had a lot of
Uh-huh.
homeboys on campus who were like brothers to me. And his thing
Uh-huh.
was, if I help you do this and it gets back to some of our other friends, I'm really gonna be in trouble that I'm actually helping you do it. And so I
Uh-huh.
was just like, I promise I'm not going to say anything. So I remember he linked me with a girl at school that I had just met, and she was really nice. And I remember her saying, well, you know what? I just started working at a club because I'm a single parent. I'm trying to get through school. And she said, why don't you guys just, come to my club and, kind of get a, so you can get a feel of it. Ever, going up there with my friend, my homeboy. I remember going up there with him.
Uh-huh.
And it was like during the day. So it's really nobody in there. And she said, I just started working here. So I don't really know much of anything either. And so I do remember her saying that it was other clubs here that made more money. And she was just
Uh-huh.
like, well, maybe we need to do that. So I remember calling my friend from California, the one who moved back to Georgia, and I remember telling her about it. And she was just like, well, Erica, you know what? I'm here at, Georgia State and I'm needing some extra money too. So maybe I should go with you guys and, we'll like go searching around for clubs. And
Mhm.
we did. And I remember asking my friend, I asked her, I said, do we need to bring a resume? And she said, Erica,
You going to a
you
strip club.
you don't need a resume to go to the strip club and get a job.
Mhm.
And I was
Mhm.
thinking, okay, well, what? She said, just, we'll dress cute and we'll dress similar. And we did that. And I remember we had like a list of the strip clubs we were going to go to,
Uh-huh.
but we ended up at the Blue Flame first
Okay.
after my friend Christian picked me up. She was the only one with the car. She picked me up, and then we picked my friend from school. And then we went to the Blue Flame. We were like driving around Atlanta. And I remember when we went into the king at the Blue Flame, I remember them saying, okay, so what are we going to do? And I thought, I don't know, but I'm not ready to go in or anything yet. Like, let's just sit here and let's just see if we see somebody and can ask some questions. And so it was a guy coming out. And my
Mhm.
friend flagged him down and we talked to him. And when you read it in the book, it is absolutely hilarious, the stuff that he was telling us. I mean, he
Really?
got real down and raw. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it here. When we were talking to him, telling him we, were new to this strip club thing and we
Uh-huh.
wanted to get jobs. And he was just like, you know what? Well, I don't think this is the club for you guys. He said, some of the girls, might have some stab wounds, or maybe a
Oh
bullet
my.
wound. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, what? And, he was just like giving us the real deal about certain strip clubs. He was like, and then he was talking to us about turning tricks.
Mhm.
And he said, don't get a pimp. Don't, you don't want to get into that lifestyle. Like he was giving us the real deal. We were like, whoa, like
Mhm.
all of this stuff go on at the strip club. I mean, it was down dirty and raw. He was telling us, you don't want to be in this crowd. You don't want to be hanging out with the girls who do this, 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 and this. You guys are in
Mhm.
college. You just want to get in and get out. And so he said, but you probably need to go to Magic City. He said either Magic City or it was another one that he was telling us about. And I talk about it in the
Mhm.
book. And so
Mhm.
we decided to do that. And we
Were
were
you
a little
nervous
bit
at
more,
all? Were
huh?
you nervous at all about
Yes, we were nervous because we didn't even get out to go into the first strip club because he was just
Uh-huh.
like, I don't think this is the scene for you. Maybe you need
Mhm.
to either go to Magic City or another one. And so we decided, okay, we've heard so much about Magic City. We're going to go to Magic City. And so we went to Magic City, and it was a girl sitting at the front door who is still a cool friend of mine today. And
Uh-huh.
and she was just like, oh, you guys are here for a job? And we were like, yeah. She said, she told the guys, move over. And she was like, y'all come on in. And
Mhm.
so we came in, and I remember looking around like, God, this is like a fantasy. Like it was something out of this world. And I was just thinking, oh, wow. And my friends were saying the same thing. And I remember the manager, it was a female manager.
Uh-huh.
She came and she said, you girls are here for a job? She said, well, it's busy tonight. You came on a really busy night, but Magic City is always busy.
Mhm.
But it was like a weekend type busy. And she said, I think it was a Friday maybe, and a Thursday or Friday. And she said, why don't you girls sit at this table and I'll be back with you guys. I'll check in with you guys to see how you're doing, but I'm going to be making my rounds before I can actually talk to you and I guess interview you.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
we were like, okay. So we sat at the table, and then my friend said, well, it's like a 2-drink minimum. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, we don't drink, so let's just get some Sprites. And so I think we got like a Shirley Temple or something.
Uh-huh.
And so we did that. And I remember guys coming over to us and like, oh, are you here for a job? And we were like, yeah. And I remember we made a lot of money just sitting there for jobs. Like the
Mhm.
guys would give us money and say, well, when you start working here, we'll come back and see you and da da da. I mean, it was like, oh wow. I just remember thinking this is like something in fantasy land. I had never been to a strip club. And the strip
Mhm.
club that my friend was working at, it was nobody in there. So,
Mhm.
it was during the day, it was nobody in there. And I guess she was day shift, and I don't know what was going on that day, but it was basically nobody in there. So to see Magic City with all the people there, and it was like celebrities, I'm not going to name any names, but,
Mhm.
and so I remember because I guess how the guys were responding to me and my friends. The manager, when she took us, in the restroom, and she was like, okay, well, I'll interview you. And she was like, I just want to make sure that your bodies are fine and you don't have any marks. And she said everything was okay. And then one of my friends, my friend from California,
Uh-huh.
she punked out and said, you know what, I'm not ready. And we were like, okay, so you're not going to do it? And she said, no. I was like, oh God. And so my other friend said, you know what? We'll do it. And she said, I'll think about this. And we were like, okay, you think about it, but we're going to go ahead and get our permit. At the time, it was not even a lot of money for a permit. I think it was like, I don't know, $35. But
Oh,
the
so you
money
have to
that
have
we
a
had made,
permit? You have to have a
you have to
permit
have
to
a permit
dance?
to work at the strip club. Yes, you do. You have to go
Oh,
to
wow.
I guess, the police department or something. But at that time, it was only, I think it was like $35 or 30. It was like very low. And,
Uh-huh.
like a year later, they changed it to like, I think 200 and something. But all in all, working there, I remember thinking, I have to have a plan on getting in and getting out. The only thing that I need is my money for school. And I'm sure, the money that you make, I'm going to be able to actually pay for my living expenses outside of here because I have my own place. And I did that. And it was going towards the time where I was getting ready to quit because I was having my graduation party at Magic City, and it was something amazing. But I met my now ex-husband at the club. He
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily a customer. He would come in and talk to the owner. And later I found out that the owner who was the owner at that time was his brother-in-law, because the
Mhm.
original owner was in federal jail. And so I remember, he would come in and talk to him, and then usually he would leave, but he usually didn't get like dances. You could tell that he was maybe like family to the owners or something. And so
Uh-huh.
he seemed like a really nice person. And long story short, we ended up getting married. Um,
Wow.
he just wasn't the person that he presented himself to be. He also told me that he was a lot younger than what he actually really was. And I started seeing like different things in terms of when he did take me around his family. I remember when we started dating and when we got engaged, I remember his sister being a little standoffish towards me. And this is
Uh-huh.
sister, the youngest sister. She was a little standoffish. The older sister was, pretty nice, but I just didn't really get too much of a good vibe. And I talk about that in my book.
Uh-huh.
And I do remember when we got engaged, my husband said that his mother wanted to come down and meet me. And I thought, okay, so the dinner was going to be at his sister's house. And when we were sitting at the table, I remember his mom making a statement of, well, I'll just I'll I'm doing I'm trying to do the names that I gave them in the book. Sometimes I accidentally switch over to what their real name is,
Uh-huh.
but my
So
ex-husband
Erica's
said, yeah,
using pseudonyms, fake names in the book
yes,
for
it's definitely a true story, but sometimes when I'm talking about the different characters in the book, I accidentally say name instead of the name that I gave them in the book. And I try
Uh-huh.
my best not to do that. And so, all in all, his mom made a statement that she wanted to see his ex-wife.
Mhm.
And I thought, but she did it in a very, very rude type manner. And I thought to myself that this probably is not good. And his sisters kind of thought that funny. They all looked
Mhm.
at each other. The two of them looked at each other and they kind of thought it was funny. And it was sort of like things went downhill from that. I talk about the details of everything in my book. One of the things I am going to get to is, being around my ex sister in law. There would be times when I would eat at her house, and
Mhm.
once we were married, I would eat at her house, and I just always noticed I would be sick. I would be really, really sick a lot of times after eating at her house. And I remember this one time in particular, I'm like, jumping because this book is like 500 pages. It's like a lot of stuff that went on in between time, a lot of disrespectful things, a lot of his sisters calling the ex-wife to come down for family get-togethers when she had invited us so that they could kind of see the drama unfold.
Mhm.
The ex-wife would always nitpick at me. She would always say disrespectful things when she'd come around.
Mhm.
And the sisters would laugh. They thought it was funny. And they would his sister would always pretend like she didn't know that the ex-wife was coming down to visit with the kids. And the
Mhm.
kids were not little because the oldest one at the time was about 18,
Mhm.
and the next one was about 15, 16, and then the other was 13, 14. So they weren't little, and she would come down and she would throw little jabs at me. Like she'd say something like, I'll give you my real name, Erica. But she would say things like, when she's there, she'd walk in and she'd go, "Oh, Erica, you're here. I didn't think you'd be here at a family get together."
Mhm.
And she would do things like that. It would always be little jabs.
Okay,
And
so
the
there's a
family,
question now.
oh,
Were they always mean to you, like as soon as you met them, your in-laws?
it was not mean, but it was more so not genuine. I could feel that was something not right. You know what I mean? I just did not get a really good feeling around them. And then when I met the mom, and that was my very first dinner that I recall having with the whole family, with the sisters, with the mom and everybody. And then the mom, my mother in law making the statement that she wanted to see his ex wife. So
Mhm.
basically, it was, I don't want to see you. I want to see his ex wife. And she kept emphasizing it and kept talking about, well, who's going to take me to her house? Who's going to take me over
Mhm.
there so I could see? Because that's who I want to see. So it was like a
Mhm.
lot of that, a lot of scheming, a lot of, so of course that's going to, you're talking about the ex
Mhm.
wife and how you're meeting me for the first time, but you're saying how you want to see her and you want your daughters to take you to her house to see her and the kids. And so it
Mhm.
was a lot of shady things going on in between time. And when things would be said, it would always be snickers. It would be, the sisters laughing about it. And
Mhm.
so when that happened, my mother-in-law rubbed me the wrong way when that happened. And the sisters also, when they thought it was funny. And because I
Mhm.
didn't think that that was funny, and I felt like that was pretty disrespectful. Things
Mhm.
could be done differently. So I'm going to jump into when I would eat at the sister's house and I
Okay.
would get sick.
You saw that
And
question that
I
popped up
didn't,
down there. Uh-huh.
yeah, I would get
But you're
sick.
getting there.
But
Uh-huh.
you know what? I'm not thinking, I'm not thinking, boo. I'm just not thinking any of that stuff. Um, I just know that I wouldn't
Mhm.
feel so well when I would eat at her house. She was always wanting to invite us over for get togethers. But usually, when she invited us over, the ex wife would pop up not long after we get there with the kids. And she lived in
Mm.
Alabama.
Mhm.
The dinners were in Georgia. And the sister
Wow.
would go, "Oh my God, I didn't even know she was coming. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I
Mhm.
didn't even know she was coming. Do like little nitpicky things at me.
Mhm.
The sisters would laugh about it. And I remember telling my husband then, I was like, this is that every time we're invited to a holiday get together, that she pops up. I said, this is not a coincidence. And then she does like little nitpicky things. And, he always blows things off. But
Mhm.
then his daughter said one day she had come down to visit us for the weekend and he asked her, and she said, oh no, Auntie invited us down.
Mm.
We didn't, mom didn't just pop up. When we come, we're invited. And so always make sure that the ex-wife up. And then when the ex-wife was doing nitpicky things to me, the sisters and the ex-wife would laugh about it. And so this was a
Wow.
constant thing, would laugh about it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I do remember, um, at this point, I'm working at a college. I'm in graduate school. And my son was actually born about 4.5, 5 months after. My son was born like 4 or 5 months before I got my master's degree. And so I do remember by this time, though, my son was, after I graduated and everything, my son was about 1 years old.
Mhm.
We were invited to the sister's house again. And by this point, then I don't want to go to the family get togethers anymore because it's a lot of, really shady being done to me. If
Mhm.
the ex-wife doesn't pop up, it's other shots being thrown laughing. And another shot that I can say, we went to the family's house for the oldest sister's son's high school graduation. When we went there,
Mhm.
I was in the kitchen with my husband at the time, and his sisters were in the living room with one of the son's girlfriend. And
Mhm.
them saying, well, I want the family to play like this Twister game. And I remember saying, oh, well, I want to play. But as soon as I finish eating my cake, then I'm coming in there. And then the
Mhm.
sister that I'm talking about, the one where I eat at her house and I would always feel sick, she starts throwing dollar
Mhm.
bills on the floor. She starts throwing dollar bills. She takes out a roll of money and starts throwing dollar bills. And then she goes, I bet if it was we was making it rain up in here and giving out money, I bet certain people want to play then. It was
Mhm.
always messy, wrong at me. So this is what I'm talking about. And
So
so
by
and
this
worse.
point, mhm.
Oh, you can ask, yes.
By this point, you were done stripping. By this point, were you still dancing, or were you done
I
dancing?
had stopped before I got married. I had stopped. I
Mhm.
only
Okay.
worked there and by the time I got married, I was already in graduate school. I wasn't working there anymore. I was in grad school and I was working at a college. So I was
Gotcha.
not, yeah, by the time I was married, actually before I got married, I was not working there anymore. I had had
Mhm.
my graduation party there and that was the end,
That was
graduation
it.
party,
Okay.
and that was it. Yeah, that was
Mhm.
absolutely it. And so by the time I was going around them, I wasn't working there anymore. This time I'm in graduate school. And it was still things like this being said and things being done. And
Mhm.
now I'm going to jump to the one time that I ate at my sister in law's house. I remember it was day. I remember feeling really sick. I remember feeling well, but I also remember having like something on my throat and I didn't know what that was. Boss at the college, she was just like, you really need to get that checked out and I think you need to go to the doctor. I was like, well, I'll go to the doctor tomorrow, but right now and we have a lot going on. And so she was like, okay, but make sure that you go. And I got really, really sick. By this point, my ex-husband was in between jobs and so his brother-in-law, the brother-in-law who was in when in federal prison working at the club for that year, he was now out by the when we got married. He
Mhm.
was now out and he had taken over his at this point, since my husband was in between jobs, he said, well, until you get another engineering job, you just work here as a manager for me at the club, you go back into engineering. And so he did that. And this particular
Mhm.
night, and mind you, it was like the day after we ate at her house. I think it was like a Sunday we ate at her house. And I remember just being really, really sick. I remember he was at the club, so I knew he was home until like about 4 or 5 something in the morning because the club. And I
Mhm.
remember my son, he was 1 year old. He was laying beside me and downstairs, and I wasn't able to reach the home phone because it was like, I don't know, I wasn't able to move. Body was hurting and aching so bad. I was not able to move. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. And I remember when my ex-husband did get home, I don't know, maybe 5 something, the sun was starting to come up. And I told him
Mhm.
I was burning up hot. And I told him that, and he was just like, he picked me up and took me to the emergency room. But first, we dropped my son off
Wow.
at the daycare. And when I got to the, um, I remember asking for something. Like, I don't remember like a whole lot, but I do remember they didn't ask for my name after they took my temperature. After they took my
Mhm.
temperature back and they gave me a room. And I remember um, once they started getting me a little stable, a doctor came in. He was a young doctor. This doctor said, I need to talk. And I was thinking, I didn't think anything of it. And my husband was sitting there also. And the doctor said, I need to talk to her alone. And I can't have anybody else in the room. And,
Wow.
and I remember him saying, well, I'm her husband. He said, I can talk to her. And so he asked him to leave. And so when he walked out of my house, he was peeking through the window. And then the doctor turned around and then closed it. And so when the doctor came back over to me, um, is somebody doing something to you? And I said, doing something to me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know what you mean. He said, is somebody doing something? Now, what we did find is that you have thyroid disease. He
Mhm.
said, and your thyroid disease is in to help with that. He said, but our main concern was what we found in your blood. I was thinking in my blood, he said, there was poison in your blood. And I'm asking you,
Wow.
is there someone doing something to you? And I said, no, like I don't know if something to me, like poison. I didn't even really
Wow.
believe it. I didn't
Mhm.
believe it. I'm thinking poison, like I don't know. I just didn't really believe it. It was poison in your blood. And if you tell me that you even just think that somebody is doing something to you, get you some help. I can help you. That's all you need to tell me is have a thought or you think that somebody. And I was like, I don't even know, like, if somebody is doing that to me. That I remember my sister in law coming up there because I could hear her.
Mhm.
And I do recall hearing her like in the husband, and he was my husband at the time. And the doctor being called to come out. And when the doctor, he said that he was going to come back, but when the doctor went out, he never came back, and I never saw that doctor again. Not even when I was admitted into the hospital that day, I never saw that doctor again. And I thought that that was really strange. I do recall in the middle, like, let's say during the day, they would have me stable and I would not be feeling like I'm running a fever or anything.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm feeling a little better, the hospital. And I remember there would be a nurse that would come in my room in the middle of the night, and she would put something like in my IV or something. And then once she did that and ran and went out the room, it was like I got sick again and I started feeling the symptoms again. And then the other nurses would then come in and be trying to treat me. And I just thought every night in the middle of the night, this nurse, it was the same nurse that I can recall, would come in there and she would put something in my IV or even, give me a shot or something. And then I would feel really, really sick again.
Wow.
And yeah, I remember, I also remember the hospital telling everybody that called me, my family calling from California, my friend Georgia, and my play cousin, when they would call the hospital and ask for my, they were told that there was nobody by my name in the hospital. And when they
So
would even,
who do you think told them to do that? Who do you think told them to
I don't know.
give
I
people
don't
that
know.
information? Wow.
I don't know because everybody was telling me what was happening
Mhm.
when my parents called, when my aunties from California, two auntie in California who are identical twins, my mom's sisters, and they're actually nurse practitioners. So they were calling
Mhm.
also from California. And you
Mhm.
call my parents, and my parents would be like, well, know that you are there. They would all tell me, well, the nurses that pick up the phone are telling us that you're not admitted there. We give them your name, and they said that there's nobody admitted there by your name. Even told me, like I would tell my friends, this is the room that I'm in. And my friends, when they would come in, they would say, Erica, we waited for the nurse to turn her back. And then we just went to your room because they're telling us there's nobody by your name that's admitted here. I
That
thought
is
it was really
crazy.
my
Strange, very
yeah.
strange.
My sister-in-law also has a really close friend who is also a nurse at that same hospital. She's a registered nurse.
Mhm.
So I do know she knows people there and she has a lot of pull there too. And she has
Mhm.
money. So, um, so I remember my play cousin telling me that, my friend from college telling me that, one of my friends from the club telling me that. They were just like, Erica, why are they telling people that you're not admitted here? So we have to just wait till they turn it back and then run to your room. Because we have your room number, we know what room you're in, but they keep telling us when we try to come to visit you that there's nobody here
So
by that
strange.
name. And I just thought that was
Somebody
strange.
somebody asked, "Do you think the nurses were evil too?"
Know what was going on, but I do know that I never saw that doctor again who told me about the poison in my blood that they found. And that was I did that, you know. Um it was scary. It was real scary. And I do remember
Wow.
there was a male nurse that started coming in the morning, early
Mhm.
morning, and he would come in and he would just talk to me and he would tell me, he said, you know, I just weighed, you are 88 pounds. I knew I was
88.
small. I was 88 pounds. And
Wow.
I'm 5.5, and I was 88 pounds. And he told me, he said, you're 88 pounds. And I said, are you sure? I can't be just 88 pounds. He said, oh, we're pretty sure. We weigh you every day. You're 88 pounds. He said, I'll weigh you again, but and he weighed me. He said, you're 88 pounds. He said, he told me, he said, you're not going to get well as long as you are in this hospital. You're not going to get well. You're never going to get well as long as you're here. He said, you're not going to leave this hospital to get well if you stay here. And
Mhm.
so he said, and I'm thinking, okay. And I do remember he had this accent. I thought it was like a Caribbean like accent. I can't, but it was an accent he had. And one of my friends who came to visit me, Mercedes, we were in the same, we graduated together from Morris Brown. She came
Mhm.
and she's from Jamaica. And I remember when he came into the room one morning, she goes, when he's talking to me, me. She goes, "Oh, hey." And then they start talking. And he's like, "Oh, I hear your accent." And she's talking. And she's like, "Oh, I'm from Jamaica." And he's telling her where he's from and everything. And
Mhm.
so she was just like, when he left out, she said, "Oh, he's really nice." And I told her that, he was really nice helping me. And I remember when she left, I remember I did start having an endocrinologist come visit me. But what he told me is I can help you with your thyroid disease, but the other
Right.
stuff that they found in your blood, you're going to have to get some help because that has nothing to do with your thyroid. And that's what the
Wow.
endocrinologist who visited me in the hospital said. He said that what the other stuff that they found in your blood, that has nothing to do with thyroid. And I
Right.
remember telling him, well, the male nurse that comes in, he was like, "Male nurse?" I said, "Yes, the male nurse with the accent." He said, "There is no male nurse on your floor." I said,
Wow.
"No, it is a male nurse on my floor." Accent. And then I remember the doctor saying he was going to check into it, but he doesn't recall there being any male nurse working like on my floor or anything. But
Mhm.
I was pretty clear that it was because my friend Mercedes, her name is LaShusha, when she came to visit me, they had a conversation. It was like she
So
really
she
liked him.
saw him.
So she saw
Mhm.
him and she was
Right.
just like, "We talked and everything. No, there is a male nurse." And I told her,
Mhm.
when I talked to her again, I said, "Well, they said it's no male nurse." She said, "Well, who was it that I talked to?" And I remember the male nurse in the middle of the night, the nurse would come in my IV and give me a shot or something. And then I would get sick again. And then he would come in the morning, something and give me something. He would weigh me and then I
Wow.
would feel better. And you're going to have, I told him about the nurse that would come in the middle of the night. He told me, he said, "You're going to have to get out of here." He said, "You're not going to
Get
get
out of
better
here.
if you're here.
Mhm.
You got to." I said, "So what do I do?" He said, "I want you to talk to the endocrinologist and I want you to tell him, ask him if he can release you so you can go." I remember when the endocrinologist came back to visit me, I did that. And the endocrinologist
Mhm.
said, "You are too sick to go home. I cannot release you now. You can't go home right now. You're not well enough to go home." And I was just like, in my mind, I'm thinking, the nurse is telling me, I'm not going to leave here and I'm not going to leave here. I need to go. And so I remember when he came in the next morning, I told him what the doctor said. He said, "I'm going to keep," he said, "You're going to get well while I'm here." He said, "You're going to get well enough." He said, "Your endocrinologist is coming back to visit you today. Ask him again." He said, "And when
Can
he
you go
checks you
home?
out," yeah, he said, "When he checks you out, you know, whatever it was he was doing for me, better." And he said, "And
Mhm.
then ask him again if he can let you go home because you're not going to get better until you get out of here and get home." Um,
Mhm.
I remember when the doctor came back in, I begged him. I said, "Can you please just let me go home?" I said, "I'm not going to be able to get well here. I feel like better if I go home." And I remember him saying he needed to think about it because he said, the test and everything that they were running, I just wasn't well enough to go. Didn't feel comfortable sending me home in the health, the way my health looked. But I do
Mhm.
remember he agreed to let me go home. But also I told him I wanted him to be my regular from that point forward. Because, I could choose another
Mhm.
endocrinologist or I could choose him. And I decided, and I remember him allowing me to go home. And as
Mhm.
I said, nobody, he came back in. And when he allowed me to go home, he did tell me, he said, "I checked into what you were talking about the male nurse with the accent. I was right. There is no male nurse on this floor. As a matter of fact, there is no male nurse here that fits the description that you're talking about. But
Okay.
I know
So
that
there's
there
a
was a male
question on
nurse."
the yeah, there's a question. Was the information about the poison in your paperwork when you were released from the hospital?
I didn't see anything in there about the poison, but the doctor
Right.
clearly said that that's what they found. The endocrinologist became my regular doctor. He would, you need to get help for the other stuff that they found in your blood. And so I don't ever
Right.
recall it. It could have been in there, but I don't recall that being in the paperwork. And so I felt like if there was no male nurse, and in my heart, I felt like God's angel helping me,
Mhm.
saving me. This is God's angel because, my friend Mercedes, even today, she'll say, there was a, I met him too. You weren't the only one that met him. I met him and I
Mhm.
talked to him and we had an accent and they talked about that she was from Jamaica. Even today, she says that, but there was no male
Mhm.
nurse. And I just felt like God found somebody to come say it. I would feel better when he would come in the morning and help me. But then that nurse, or what I thought was the nurse, would put something in my IV and give me a shot or something, then I would feel worse. I would feel bad again. I would feel just as bad, if not worse, as I did when I came in there. And so I knew that God was protecting me. And I just didn't understand what was going on. I remember I was getting to a point to where I didn't want to go to my sister-in-law's house anymore to eat. And then it would cause a
Mhm.
problem between me and my husband, her brother. And he would have an
Mhm.
issue with it. Oh, well, why don't you want to come to my family's house? And so it would always be drama because I don't want to go over there. And I do remember when I did go over there with him, not long after, it was maybe, I don't know, a few months or so when I got out the hospital. The oldest sister's best friend was over there too. And the sister was bragging about how I got really, really sick and ended up in the hospital the day after I ate at her house. And
Wow.
the oldest sister's friend, best friend, shushed her and told her, don't say that. Don't say that in front of her. So it was like
Mhm.
everybody knew. Everybody knew
Right.
what was going on. Everybody knew what was going on. Um, the
So I'm
oldest
gonna
sister,
stop you right there because I want people to be able to ask questions,
oh yeah, sure,
and
sure.
I want them to purchase the book so they can read the rest of the story.
Yes,
But does anybody have any questions out there that they wanted to ask? Um, Pat says, I have a thyroid condition called Graves' disease. I'm sorry you went through that.
I'm sorry you're
Um,
going through that too. And my endocrinologist did say that it was hereditary. And at the time, I said, "Oh, I don't know anybody that has thyroid disease," but that wasn't true because when my parents talked to my grandmother, she said, "Oh no, it does run in the family because me, along with all of my sisters, we have it too." So
mhm.
it was my grandmother, my mom's mother, my grandmother, and all her sisters have it. It skipped my mom's, but all of their daughters have it. So me and all of my first cousins disease.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
So, any other questions out there? I know we're
no, the
past our
police
time,
wasn't
but we wanted to
called.
get that story in, as much to leave
Yeah.
like a cliffhanger for them to want to go purchase the book to finish
Well,
hearing the
I'll end
rest
it,
of
but like it gets
it.
so yeah. I know
I know
it's
you
like when
get
we
into
talk
it.
about this, I'm reliving it all over again. And when I go through my
Right.
book and I look through it, I still cry because I still
Of course.
remember as if it was yesterday everything that I went through. And
Yep.
it's a lot worse than what I can give you here. It's all in the
Mhm.
book because I was
Right.
able to. And let me tell you, one thing I can say: when the publishing
Mhm.
company, when they proofed my book,
Mhm.
I I asked God have me to write everything that He felt needed to be in the book, and then stop me when it's time to stop the book. So when
Mhm.
I read through the book, some of the stories that I tell in the book, I was like, I don't want people to know about this.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, I really don't want people to know about this. Maybe I should take it out. So I was feeling self-conscious because I was just like, maybe I should take certain things out of the book that I'm disclosing, because how
Mhm.
would people see me? What would people think about me, working at the club? What would family members say? What would people say, about me going through all of the stuff that I went through and why I didn't shut it down. And, you know, but I decided not to
Wow.
take it out the book. I left it in there. So and I thought about it, I said, God, I did ask you what it
Mhm.
needs to be in the book, just have me to put in the book. And I didn't remember some of the things that I talked about that I went through, that I actually put it in this book. And I got really embarrassed about it because I was like, oh God, people are going to know about this. People are going to know a lot of stuff. But I left
Mhm.
it in there. And that's why I say the
Good.
book gets down and dirty and raw. Like I I let it all out. I let it all
Good.
out.
So
And no,
Donetta
what
says,
was it called? Yeah,
yeah, you see
venom was
that?
around me.
Mhm.
And my sister-in-law was, I found out she was also into witchcraft too.
Wow.
Yeah, she was into witchcraft, dark magic and stuff.
And so
Yeah,
Donetta
and
says
she
God sent
accidentally
those.
let it slip. She let it slip
Uh-huh.
one day when the oldest
Uh-huh.
sister passed away. We went to New Jersey to visit their parents because they were, grieving. And the father, it's actually my husband's stepdad, but it's her real dad, who she don't like. But he made her
Uh-huh.
really, really mad. And in front of me, she said, "Oh, she said, I'm gonna go to the spirit store on him. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him." I said, "What did
Oh
you say?"
my.
I said, "What did you say?" And she looked at me like, and I told my dad, and my dad said, "She didn't mean for you to hear that. That's where she
Right.
going on you to the spirit
Uh-huh.
store."
Yes. So Donetta says God sent those angels to help you. When and how did you get out? And then I see another question. How long, Karen says, how long did it take for you to get well from the blood poison?
I got well once I stopped eating at his sister's house.
House. Yeah.
That's when I stopped going over there, and when I stopped eating at her house, that's when I got well. I still deal with my thyroid, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's
Yeah.
something that you deal with throughout life. I had mine removed through radioactive iodine treatment. So I'm pretty good on my, levothyroxine and everything. But I didn't get sick to the magnitude of what I was with after I stopped eating at her house. My dad even came down to visit from Georgia and told me, he said, "I think I know what's wrong with you. You need to stop eating at your sister-in-law's house." And when I did that, I stopped getting sick.
Yes. So Michelle says, go
Yeah.
buy the book, guys. Go buy the book. And then here's
Yeah.
the
It,
link.
it goes deep.
I keep putting the link on it, and I'm gonna put it on my page. Make sure you follow
Thank
Erica,
you.
so that when she writes the next book,
Thank you.
um,
Yes, because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't this part of my life from Georgia. Now I have to do a part two when I move back to California.
wow,
And another thing, my ex-husband never protected me. He never stood
that's
up
what I
to his
was wondering.
family
Yeah.
because he was too busy doing his dirt to me too, and
Oh
being
wow.
controlling and being mentally and emotionally abusive, and at times physically, but more
Mhm.
so mentally. And it's in the book too, some things that he did also.
Okay. So
Yeah.
guys, we see
One
how
he tried to get
jealousy.
me to eat something.
Yeah, we see how jealousy is a terrible thing, and her
Right.
Erica's case is the extreme where someone's actually poisoning her for no reason. She did absolutely nothing to these people. They
I
just
haven't. And I
yeah.
actually asked them. I asked a sister, when I was getting ready to leave her brother, she didn't know it, but I was getting ready to file for divorce.
Mhm.
I did talk to her, and I asked her, what did I
Mhm.
do to her? What did I do to the ex-wife? What did I do to anybody in the family? She didn't want to tell anything on herself. And she was actually the ringleader of everything, but
Mhm.
she would say, well, all I'm going to admit to is that I didn't properly welcome you into the family. And I'm sorry for that. I will admit that, but I'm not admitting nothing else. She said, but then she started telling on everybody else, the other sister, the ex-wife. She was like, well, the
Mhm.
ex-wife feel like you're prettier than her, you're younger than her, and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, what did I do to you guys for you to do all this stuff to me?
Mhm.
What did I, and she told me, she said, what really gets to her is that she can't say that I've ever done anything wrong to any of them, not even the ex wife.
Mhm.
She said, because, and they're the type, if I had done something wrong, you best believe they're going to tell me. And they're going to tell
Mhm.
my husband, oh, this is what she said. This is what she did. You know what I mean? She
Mhm.
said, if you did anything wrong to us or said anything wrong, we would have told you, but you
Mhm.
haven't. And so she was telling on everybody else. And it all revolves around jealousy. And what I had to learn, and what I really had to learn, because see, I see them as, my sister in law is a millionaire, her husband is a millionaire, and then
Mhm.
the other sister whose husband took over the club when the original owner went to prison for 10 years, they became millionaires and started their own stuff. So it's like, when you met me, I was just finishing undergraduate school. I
Right.
wasn't even really fully in my field. I was in
Mhm.
grad school. You guys have all of this. What is your issue with me? And I
Right.
remember my dad telling me, a lot of times jealousy does not always have to be about what you look like or things like that. Sometimes it could be, the person that you are. Because I do know, another thing that my sister-in-law did say. She said, I can tell you this. When we first met you, you were always smiling all the time. You were always happy and you were always smiling. I was 25. She
Wow.
said, you were
They didn't know.
always happy and always smiling. And we
Mhm.
didn't understand why you're always happy, why you're always smiling. I'm a millionaire and I'm not happy. What are you happy about?
Right.
That's another issue. She said
Jealousy.
that is one
Yeah.
of the issues that they had with me.
Because you were smiling. And one question down here says, did the police ever get involved?
No, they did not. They did not. I never called them. I don't even recall seeing anything in the records at the hospital, like what they gave me of what the doctor
Wow.
told me. And remember, when the doctor told me that, I didn't believe it. I thought,
Mhm.
well, maybe he got something wrong. What would
Mhm.
poison? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this couldn't happen, but it was
Mhm.
real. It was real. And I thought, a lot of times people really do need to understand jealousy is not just about, oh, I think this person looks better than me, or oh, this person has
Right.
more than me. It could be things that you absolutely have no control over. Like, yeah, I probably was happy all the time and I was smiling all the time. I was only 25 years old when I met them. I was in
Mhm.
undergrad. I didn't really have no real issues, like, go life. Okay, you're
Right.
mad at me
Mhm.
because I'm happy and I'm smiling. It's not my fault that you're rich, but you're still not happy. I guess
Right.
her thing was, you don't have nothing compared to me. She actually said that. You don't have nothing. I have everything. Why are you so happy? Why are you smiling all the time?
And why aren't you happy? Because you have all the money. Like, what is
Right. Why aren't you happy? But she wasn't
yeah.
happy because she was evil.
Mhm.
She was evil. And she had a lot of, she has, it's a lot more about her that I talk about in this book. Things that they've done, things that they've said, um, the wicked stuff. I remember when my son was a couple of months old,
Mhm.
his sister asked me if she could have my son. She asked me if she could have my son. What she
Wow.
told me was that I didn't have nothing and she had everything and she could give my son a better life. And she said, why don't you just give him to me? It's just going to be a tax write off for me anyway.
Wow.
My ex husband was sitting there when she said that.
And didn't defend you at all. There was no wow.
Never defended me. No.
Wow.
Pretended like he didn't even hear it. But you're standing right there with me and you didn't hear it. And she
Wow.
said it like it was no big deal. It's just going to be a tax write off for me anyway, just like that.
Wow.
So I
That's
was
horrible.
always subjected. And, I was angry at myself because I'm just not the type that would just allow people to just do what they were doing to me. But it was like, I thought, okay, they don't really know me. Maybe if they get to know me better and they'll see what type of person I am, maybe
Mhm.
they'll stop.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll kill them with kindness. Well, one thing I can tell you, evil people, you cannot kill them with kindness
Right. Wow.
because evil does not like good. So you can't kill evil with kindness because they're, the more that I was just nice to them, the more that, I just bit my tongue, hoping that, maybe once they get to know me, and they actually get to know me. And they said that I was a good person, but it did not stop them from doing the things that they were doing to me. The
Mhm.
oldest sister only stopped when she developed cancer and the doctors told her that she was dying. Now, she didn't want to be a part of the drama anymore. She didn't want to be a part of the telling my son when he was 2 years old, 3 years old, that he didn't have to listen to me. She
Mhm.
at that point started telling the other sister, don't say that to him. Don't tell a child to disrespect his mom and not to listen to his mom. Before it was funny to her, but she's dying now. So I guess she wanted to get right with God before she leaves here. But it wasn't
Right.
until he was dying, and she passed on too. It wasn't until she was dying that she didn't want to have no parts of it. And she also did tell her daughter in law and her son's fiance that when she passed, if they could look out for me and talk to me. And they did. They told me to stop eating at the other sister's house,
Stop
is what
eating
they
at the
told me.
house.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they told me, stop eating there. They said, don't go over there anymore. And they told me that before she died, she told them to look after me. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Gets crazy. They,
Wow.
yeah, she really is. She really is. And she's done a lot of evil to me and not just to me. I
Mhm.
feel like maybe that's the reason why she can't sleep at night, you know, because I really had to know before I left him. It was, I left in 2009. The divorce was final in 2010.
Mhm.
I did ask her due to the family. And then I did ask her, was it because of the club? Was it because I worked there? She said, why
Mhm.
would we be upset with you about that when I have friends that work there and then my husband owns it? I couldn't be mad at you about that. We, have, gotten all of our money based on that club.
From
So
that
that
club.
wasn't the reason.
Wow.
But she highlights me being happy all the time, me smiling all the time, and they don't understand why because they're not happy. And I guess they didn't like that I was smiling, I was happy, and it didn't
Wow.
have anything to do with money or material things because
Mhm.
even her money and her material things, being able to buy, like she said, everything she wanted, she could buy whatever she
Mhm.
wanted. It still didn't
Right.
make her happy. And she told me that.
And I believe that. I believe money doesn't buy you happiness. It could be miserable.
Right. And
But
my
I
dad
am.
told me,
Mhm. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, my dad told me the same thing. He said, you got better after you stopped eating at her house, didn't you? He said, that's why I told you when I came down there and I started getting a feel of what's really going on. And that's why I told you to stop eating over there.
Stop eating there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, any more
Yeah.
questions, y'all, before we close out the show? I'd like to
Yes.
thank Erica for taking her time out to talk with us here on the East Coast. Um, Make sure you purchase the book so you can read about the rest of the story and address all the questions that you've had for her.
Yes.
We want her book sales to go up. Uh, Divine Beauty says you probably wanted to support your husband at the time.
Actually,
Jealous
I
for no
did.
reason, Karen says.
I did.
Hmm.
Yeah, I did want to support when I
Support.
really did not want to.
Hmm.
But even a few times that I didn't eat. I did not eat. I made sure I didn't eat.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah,
And then Keith
yeah,
says I'm always smiling, and people have asked why are you always smiling. I wonder, does that trigger something in people when they see other people happy and smiling,
yeah,
and
right,
they're miserable inside, and then that brings out
right,
that jealousy as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just like my mom said, And that's why I put the literally on there, because by the time I wrote this book, I
Mhm.
now understood what my mom meant when we were little. A jealous person will kill you. And I put literally because I literally now know exactly what she was talking about.
Right. Wow. What a powerful
Yeah.
story. And those angels were telling you to write this book because they knew people needed to hear
Yes, they were.
this
And
story.
I'm not going to lie, I was so embarrassed. The things that I talk about in this book, sometimes I'm just like, God, I know you said to put it in there, but oh, people are going to
Mhm.
know so much. And yeah, initially
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, I don't want everybody to know that. But now I feel like maybe my story will help someone else going through something similar, a jealous situation,
Right.
something that goes, to the extreme, because it this went to the extreme. There's a lot more in here, even when
Mhm.
I was going through postpartum, when I had my son, and I didn't
Mhm.
realize then that that's what I was going through, but it was, my
Mhm.
sister-in-law would say things like, he was a newborn baby. I might be brushing his
Mhm.
hair and she would push me out the way, move, get out the way. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to be a mom. You're too young. You're too young to have kids. You don't need no
Wow.
kids.
Mm.
And I remember my mom saying, well, this is your first child and you're 28. She said, ask her how old she was when she had her first child. I think she was like
Right.
22 when her and her
I was
husband
gonna
got
say
married.
probably younger. Mhm.
Yeah, she was like 22 when she had her first baby. And my mom said, exactly. You're not 28 years old is not too young to have a child. I was
Right.
27 when I had him, and 2 months later I turned 28.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Tanisha says, "Thanks for sharing your story. I'm glad you're still here to be able to share.
Thank
God
you.
bless
And
you."
I'm only here because of God's grace and mercy.
Yes.
This whole ordeal, everything that I went through brought me, I always grew up in the church, believing God and Jesus, but now I know God for myself now. I know what he has
Right.
brought me through. I know how he saved my life. I know how he kept those evil demons away from me.
Mhm. And
And
like
that's the
Karen
only
says,
reason.
yeah. She says, "Thank God for angels on earth."
Yes,
Cause
and they are
yeah.
here. My next book will be the day I met Jesus Christ face to face, but it'll be a
Wow.
part of this part too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to that. I thank everybody for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you, Erica, for giving us your time. Truly enjoyed your story. I ordered my book, it's on the way. So
Thank
I've
you.
posted
Thank you for
those.
having me.
Yeah, and we'll have to have you back for the second book or the third book and the fourth or fifth or how
Yes,
many
thank
ever
you
you're
so
gonna write.
much.
So thank you all for joining. I'm gonna
And
give you
thank you
your
all for listening and your kind
yes.
comments. I really
And
appreciate you all.
make sure y'all share this video so that other people can hear this story and we get those book sales up for you too, Erica.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, good night, y'all. Happy
Good
Friday.
night.
Have a blessed
Happy Friday.
weekend. Self-care. Make sure you do something for yourself to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. All right.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye bye.